complete overnight munchdown crunchdown of the baby bears, Bitcoin still remains firmly in the center of the bone zone, formerly known as reach around town. But as momentum continues to build on the side of the moon boys, do the baby bears really want to risk everything on the idea that a $30,000 Bitcoin price level rejection is guaranteed? So sit down, crack open a cold juice, unbutton your jean shorts, and get ready to bust. Right now, the price of Bitcoin is at its highest levels of the last few days, but make no mistake, we are still firmly within the bone zone, and the potential to get rejected at $30,000 has not actually been tested yet. We still sit currently at very similar positions as we've been over the past 2 weeks. But before we continue with these charts, let's take a look at a few things here. So the Fed potentially does have room to pause for the first time, as the federal funds rate is above core PCE, which is their preferred measure of inflation, suggesting that monetary policy is entering a contractionary phase. And guys, keep in mind, even if the Fed doesn't really have room to pause, they're going to have to soon anyway, because things are collapsing left and right, dominoes are tumbling here and there, and the juice could not be more loose. In fact, if I think back in history, I cannot think of a time where the juice has been more loose. And here's what's interesting too, and I kind of want to pose a question here before we get into the charts and before we really dive into a few things here. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations is preparing to discuss delisting the USD, Euro, Yen, and Sterling and switching to local currencies. Another one. So I have a question here. So, say a country introduces the CBDC, or the US, let's say they would introduce a CBDC. Who's to say, how does that work? Like, who's to say that other countries would accept it as currency? The USD has power right now because it's linked to it's the petrodollar. It's been kind of the world reserve currency for decades. But if the USD is losing power, which it is, in fact, aside from this news, we also have like China and Russia agreeing to use their currencies over USD, again, further debasing or devaluing the USD. Again, we all know that the USD is not actually performing well. It's not a very good. I mean, the only reason it's held up so long is because it's been used globally. If the USD does get debased, if people stop using it worldwide, and if they switch to local currencies like we're seeing reports of more and more over just even the last week, then how exactly does a CBDC work? In my opinion, and obviously I'm biased towards Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is already a global currency, and it's already, it's already the obvious option. Another thing I want to highlight is yesterday I talked about Bitcoin and how fiat isn't backed by gold and everything. Well, Bitcoin is backed by math. Bitcoin is verifiable by math. It's a very concrete, immutable distributed ledger. And so the benefits of Bitcoin are obviously much greater than any fiat that's ever been created. A lot of people did comment the USD is actually backed by like tanks and bombs, which is unfortunately, I mean, that is true. The only thing the USD is actually backed by is war, meaning if push comes to shove, the US will just start wars. And so even though it's not backed by gold, it's backed by firepower. Which, again, kind of very much a hotly debated topic. But anyway, net taker volume shows price increase could be possible here, with the net taker volume showing aggressiveness of market sellers towards buyers here. And this type of data also very much aligns with a lot of other pieces of data. In addition, a second colossal hole has just appeared on the sun, sending solar winds straight towards Earth. So say, for example, the world will blow up, then none of this matters. But if we take a look also at Bitcoin's price, so if we take a look on the weekly chart, clearly, again, we're in the middle of this long-term macro breakout. So obviously there's a very big case to be bullish. We're above the 250-week moving averages, which are just very important. We've held there for about 3 weeks now. If we take a look also on Bitcoin's weekly chart, we do see, or this is even the 15-day chart, if we go to the weekly, you can see clearly there's bullish momentum with the MACD crossing up, very much so, after a very prolonged dippage, which has been actually over a year we've been getting dumped on. But even on like a longer term chart like the 15, actually I'm very curious to see what even something like the 1 month would show. Okay, the 1 month is coiling up, and the most bullish of this momentum has not happened yet. It's very clear. So a lot of people now are maybe talking about the potential of a big God candle up to the mid 30s, even 40K. Again, that is always realistic. And I've always said that's a very realistic possibility. In the short term, I do just want to brace people for the potential of getting a rejection off 30K. I do think it would be short term, right? If we do push back down to 25K, I do think that would be a short term thing. Everything that I said yesterday, I absolutely nothing has changed, really. We pumped another $1,000. Okay, big whoop. Really, nothing has changed here. We're still, as you can see on this chart, completely within the bone zone. And as I've been saying for like the past 2 weeks, this is kind of the area where, let's be honest, there has not been a decision made. There hasn't been a rejection and there hasn't been a pump through it. But with Bitcoin still sitting firmly within the bone zone, I do think it is important to highlight that even with this most recent FUD, we've gotten a lot of FUD actually over the past 2 weeks. Actually, we've gotten a very big amount of FUD over the past 2 weeks with crypto specifically, and crypto doesn't really seem to care that much. Whether it's Binance, the banks collapsing ended up not being FUD. It ended up being juice, moon fuel even for Bitcoin. So that's a bullish narrative. The DXY, again, it just doesn't look very strong. What's very interesting, I think, is that with the SPX, it looks as though it has done now exactly what we thought the most bullish case would be, which we were talking about this crossover and the potential for a dump right here when the SPX was over 4,100. We got the dump, but the thing is, it looks as though we ultimately held this trend line, which we said was the bullish scenario. I said we're going to get a dump, but the big thing is to see if we hold this. Now, we did go below it for a few days, but ultimately, look, we're now potentially about to break our last key moving average, the 50-day moving average, and actually potentially have bullish momentum here. So that's a very big step, actually, that we have not seen over the past year and a half that we've been in this very big dumpy downtrend. Every time we got one of these crosses, it was a very big rejection. You see that on this chart. Cross here, massive rejection. Across here, a massive rejection. Cross here, not quite as big, but that was the beginning of the turnaround at the very end of 2022. And then we ultimately broke above this trend line where you saw momentum started to shift. You could really start to identify that actually as early as the very end of 2022, and which we did. And now here we are. We had a bust above here. We said we're going to get a pullback. We have to hold this line. And I might as well just extend this line because a lot of time has gone past since I've updated this. There we go. We held this line. And now if we're able to actually set higher highs here, again, very likely we could enter a stock market bull market. If I'm being honest though, I'm not super confident in that happening. I really don't know. I don't follow the stock market as much as I follow BTC. And obviously, how will the stock market react if we do get further banking crisis? I'm much more confident in what Bitcoin will do. I don't exactly know what the stock market will do, but that starts to matter a little less if Bitcoin decouples from the stock market, because ultimately this isn't a stock market channel. Ultimately, I talk about Bitcoin. I've been talking about Bitcoin for like 6 years. So if Bitcoin starts pumping, I don't care that much if the stock market decouples. In fact, I kind of want that. Obviously, all of you guys want that. We want Bitcoin to decouple from traditional markets. So with that being said, the stock market has a potential to rally here, but if it doesn't and Bitcoin starts rallying, I won't be complaining. So with that being said, again, evidence has shown that, let's be honest, I guess the stock market hasn't seemed too shaken since the banking crisis really started unfolding about 2 weeks ago. But something also equally as huge, the second largest cryptocurrency, Ethereum, has now for the past 2 weeks broken for the very first time above this range that we've been stuck in, a very huge historical resistance. Now, is that a front running or a leading indicator for Bitcoin? It's very potentially going to be the case. Now, in past bear markets into bull market reversals at the very early stages, as we've been covering for years on this channel, we have seen top altcoins lead Bitcoin out of these downtrends, out of these bear markets. Very often, even though the main narrative is Bitcoin pumps and then over time the top alts like Ethereum pump and then the lowest pump. That's ultimately true. However, when we're first reversing the first couple of weeks and months out of a true bear market into a bull market switcheroo, very often a handful, not all of them at all, but a handful of altcoins have led. And then Bitcoin ultimately follows, and then a bull market has started. Most notably, Litecoin in the past, back in 2019, was one of them. Litecoin was one of the coins. ADA has actually, and so has Ethereum. They have all led, and then Bitcoin ultimately takes over, engulfs a lot, and then ultimately, again, it does flow down to the altcoins, the top alts, and then the lower alts. That is true. Like, that is how it usually happens, but we do see altcoins historically very likely and very able to lead. Usually for a very small amount of time. It's not usually for like prolonged like months or anything, usually a couple weeks. But Ethereum breaking out of that range is very big. We are seeing bullish momentum in things like ADA as well. You can join our stake pool. Currently, if you stake with us, in addition to receiving other just normal ADA rewards, there's also CCCC token, which you receive for free. A lot of people ask how you get it. You just claim it via drip drops. You go into dripdrops.io and you claim it there. It takes 2 seconds. It's honestly not even worth making a video. I think I have included it in 1 or 2 videos, but dripdrops.io, drip drops with a Z, DRIPDROPZ, and you claim it through there. But most importantly, you do get ADA rewards. If you want to stake with us, instructions are in the description as well, and our pool is TSC. But yeah, if we continue, Bitcoin right now, what I said at the beginning of the video here, kind of, it is a breakout, but I mean, we're only going back to the highs we were at, like 4 or 5 days ago. So that's why I'm not saying, anything super bullish is guaranteed right now. We're still in the middle of the bone zone. But also keep in mind, I mean, bump and run pattern I think is very logical. We've been talking about this for weeks. More importantly, as we've talked about, the gigantic 1.5 year long falling wedge, very strong pattern. So ultimately, Bitcoin does have a lot of room to bust. And I think over the next few weeks and months, we will bust. But all I'm saying is we might get a rejection at 30K first. And that's a totally normal and healthy thing to happen if it does happen. And I'm up roughly about 20,000 USD in profit on these trades here. If you're interested, you can take advantage of the sign-up bonuses, over 50K in deposit bonuses, free sign-up bonuses as well, and 0 fees when trading spot if you sign up with my links below. Without further ado, that's it for me.